Hello everyone, welcome to the second session of the Flutter workshop. Today we're going to be completing the app that we started building in the first session. So today it's going to be in the form of a recorded video instead of a live session. There are some cons to this, but also this means that in case you feel like I'm going too fast, you can pause the video or slow it down. And in case you need a recap anytime, you could just rewind back and go through it again, right? And hopefully, whatever you can do whatever it takes to like help you learn better through this video. And yeah, so with that said, let's get started. So I would also like to mention one thing, and that is that you may notice that this app looks considerably less aesthetic than this app, right? This looks much more modern. So for that, it's more of a personal preference thing, right? So you're going to be tweaking around with the various settings on Flutter, and I think we've shown you enough attributes for you to like go and slightly experiment with new things and come up with a design that you think looks great, right? So in case you do want to follow what uh, I will be using right now, you can just go to my GitHub and I'll be sending this repository link or putting it in the description as well. So if you go to the demo, Flutter workshop demo app, right? So this is the Flutter app with all the code that I wrote it before the workshop. So I had a reference point, right? I'll be putting this GitHub repository in the link below. So next, now that we preface that, we can start with our session, right? So first thing I would like to cover today is that I want to start with teaching you about dependencies. So far we haven't really installed anything externally, right? So whatever we've done here, we have used whatever functionality that Flutter uh, provides us with. Also, just a sidetrack, in case the emulator does start throwing issues, please spare some time. In case that does make it to the video, you can just skip through that because this is the second time I'm recording it because the last time my emulator just hugged up. So, right. So now let's start with dependencies, right? So to install dependencies in Flutter, the first place that you're going to go to is going to be this website called pub.dev, right? So pub.dev basically holds lots of different kinds of dependencies that you might need in your Flutter app. So why do we need external dependencies, right? Now you've seen that in the emulator, you can see that the font here is very generic, right? Like you've seen this font everywhere. Now, if you look at the other app, you can see that the font looks much more modern and like it looks more aesthetic, right? And the reason for this is that I'm using a different font, right? And these different fonts, you can either go to your prospect.yaml file, install font files, and here you can uncomment this part, which is just like removing the hash, right? And then putting your font files in this, or we could go to pub.dev and use this package called Google Fonts, right? So Google Fonts is a package that will help us to install or use all the fonts available on this particular Google Fonts info. So if you want to see what all fonts are available, just go to this website, fonts.google.com, and here if you just set the language to Latin, in case like you're getting a lot of random languages as soon as you open, you can just set it to Latin, and that will reduce the number of other languages. So here, now that you've selected this, you can go through and decide which font you like the best. So I've gone through this and I think I like Poppins the most, right? So I'm going to be working with Poppins, but you guys can choose whatever you like, right? So to install this Google Fonts package, what we're going to do is we're going to go to pub.dev, and this is how it's going to work for everything, right? So any dependency that you want to install, you go search it up on pub.dev, then go to installing, and here you'll find the first line to be the code that you require to install it, right? So just go click on the terminal. If you're on debug console, click on terminal. Just paste this and run it. I've already installed it, but yeah. So now that I've installed it again, what if you go to the puppet.yaml file, like initially when you go to dependencies, you'll only see Flutter SDK and Cupertino icons, but now you'll have the Google Fonts thing as well, right? Similarly, you might be able to see that we have two more dependencies here, and we're just going to install them, and I'm going to tell you their use later, right? So let's just go and search transparent image. Again, it's the same procedure. Go there, go to installing dark transparent image or Flutter pub add transparent image, and just paste it in your terminal and it will add it. Similarly, just go and search for URL launcher, and now that you search for it, just go to install it and run. Okay, so you might be able to see the different sections here, right? And every one of these has a readme, and this readme is going to tell you how to use this particular dependency, right? Because there might be some dependencies where you might not have a video just solely on how to use them, right? So what you're going to do at that time is come to this place, see under readme, go to usage and look at this example, right? And you try to understand this example. And there's going to be a configuration section, which is in case you might have to add something to your specific Android and iOS files, which you can find under Android and iOS, right? So some require some sort of configuration, and we will be doing this, right? Because URL launcher does require this configuration. So for now, you can ignore this, but just keep it in mind that anytime you're using a dependency, this is where you will find how to use it and the syntax for it and what it can do, right? And later on, like if you want, there's like a documentation for it. Like you will find all the functionality here, but most of the time it's going to be in this example, like whatever you might require from it, right? So now that we're done with this and we've chosen a font, right, we can just minimize the browser and get started here. So now till now, I don't know if I've covered this, but a text widget has an attribute called style, and this style widget takes this style attribute takes in a text style widget, and this text style widget contains all these various attributes that you can edit to make the text look like you want, right? So suppose I want the font size to increase. I'm just going to set it to like 32 and show you the difference, right? So you can see that the font is increased. And suppose I want to change the color. So I'm just going to type color and type color to black, right? So now the font is black and it's of size 32, right? So this is the default text style widget in Flutter. Now, suppose I want to change the font style, right? And apply the default styling that comes with Google Fonts. So what I'm going to do is under the styles, I'm going to search Google Fonts, and I'm going to get a suggestion to auto import the fonts.google package. And once I've imported this, I'm going to continue with a dot, and now I'm going to get a list of all the fonts that are available on the Google Fonts repository, right? So I'm just going to search up Poppins and put two brackets, right? So this is basically returning a text style widget, right? So if I just do this and save the file, you can see that my font has changed, right? So the font has changed, and now if I inside this, if I want to change the color is black, just to show you guys. So it's the same thing as the text style widget, right? So inside this you can change everything as well, right? So here I just want to change the font weight and make it bold, so you can see that, right? And increase the font size to 32. That's it, right? So we'll also need to increase the size of the app bar, right? The height and everything. So we can handle this, and we could cover this and like cover all the aesthetics part. But like I mentioned before, just go to my GitHub, and in case you want the app to look exactly the way mine looks, you can do that, or just like try it on your own. But I'm going to go to my home screen.dat, and you can see that my app bar has a lot more code than the one present here, right? So I'm just going to take this, and I'm going to copy this app bar part, and minimize this, go back here, and paste, right? So in case, again, if you do want to do this, all you have to do is go to my GitHub. You'll find the repo here. I'll put this repo in the description as well. Just go here, and this Flutter Workshop demo app contains the code that's completed, right? So here, just go to live and go to screens and home screen.dart, and you'll have all the code here, right? So now that I've copy pasted this, so now let's just put borders of, let's say, 20, right? Right? And let's see, yeah. Right. So you can see that this is looking much closer to this, right? In fact, it's the same because I just copied the code for the app bar from that, right? And now I just go through it once. So the toolbar height basically specifies how tall the nav bar is, and in this case, app bar is. So in this case, I just decided to make the app bar slightly longer to make it more usable for one-handed use. If you want to use it with one hand, it's easier to reach, right? Because yeah, and in case you have some sort of functionality here, like let's say you have a profile icon or something, if you do increase the toolbar height, it would become slightly more reachable, right? So if I modify this and make it 100, you can see that the height has changed, right? And some of you might prefer this, like this looks better, but yeah, so I'm just going to continue with this height of 120, right? So this is my app bar, and anytime you see blue squiggly lines like this, I've told you this before, is that just try entering the const keyword. The only reason I haven't entered the const keyword yet is that sometimes you may enter the const keyword on a certain widget, and then once that widget starts having some sort of variable. So let's say I make a variable here and call it, let's say, final border total, right? So now, if I do have this variable, oh yeah, so I'm initializing it, so this should be fine. But like, let's say I just had final in borders and it was a conditional, right? So if I say, in fact, like if you go to this code, you can see that I actually set custom borders based on what type of OS people are using. So for iOS, there's a different border that looks better. So I'm just going to copy this code, right? As you can see, platform. So basically, what platform means is that it's a way that Flutter provides us to just like if we import this, the platform, and yeah, auto import from dart.io. So once we import this, so you can see that platform.is Android. So this gives us information about the user's device, right, and what they're using it on. So now, if I try to put borders here, you can see that the blue squiggly lines are gone, and this is because it's not a const anymore. You cannot make it a const because it's dependent on this variable, which is dependent on compilation type. So it's really not const anymore, right? So take care of that. Like here, the icon is never going to change and it's constant. So I can just put const here, right? So this way it works. But again, yeah, like just be careful and like try to avoid this. And Flutter will give you glue squiggly and suggestions in case there is something that's const and you missed out on it. But I would suggest that wait until the end to add the const keywords just to avoid some sort of errors, right? Because you can notice that if I put const here, it's going to throw an error here. Evaluation of this constant expression throws an exception, right? So that's why I just take care of that. And now that we have that ready, so this is our app bar that is ready. Now we'll go to our list item, right? And in this list item, uh, we're going to go here again. Okay. So here we have our list item dot, and you can see that there's a lot more code here than we've written, and you can also see something called an inquiry, right? So I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to delete a few lines and like explain to you what exactly is happening, right? So if I just minimize this and go here and just select this and return this, right? So you can see that there are a few errors that are coming, and these are because I haven't imported Google Fonts. And this one I will explain. And for now, we can just remove this code or just comment it out, and I will go through it later, right? So, yeah. So once I comment this out, uh, yeah, so we can still see that we have one error here, and this K transparent image again. So if I just backspace on it, you remember that we installed the transparent image dependency. So if I just type K transparent image, you'll see the option that says auto import from transparent image. So basically what this is doing is that it's going to act like a placeholder for our app, right? And like for the images. So suppose now if I scroll here, the image will take a while to load, and while the images are loading, you can see that there's a transparent image there, right? Instead of just having nothing, it's going to have this transparent image, which is going to act like just a placeholder while the actual image loads, right? So again, I think my emulator has become buggy. That's okay. So this is a problem that you will face a lot of times with your emulator. So like if you do have an Android phone or a Mac and an iOS device, you can just go and search up how to Flutter app on Android, and you'll have to connect it to a USB cable, enable USB debugging, and then when you look at devices here, you will get your device in the options as well, and that way you can just start working with it, right? So that's how you can connect your own device, and that would be a much smoother experience because emulators usually they don't have enough resources, right? Especially on a laptop like mine, which has only 8 GB RAM and 256 GB storage. It's not possible for it to dedicate more of the RAM to the emulator, so we will see some sort of issues like this, right? But yeah, so I can just click wait here, and yeah. So now that I have this back, okay, let's just close it one. Okay, and yeah, so I have this now, and you can see that the padding is much more than I had set on this app, right? So that can be fixed wherever we are using this list item widget, which is this home screen dot. We set the padding to 24 here. Let me just set to 10 and check. And yeah, that looks more like a fit. So let's just put it 8. Yeah, and this looks much more like this app, right? So we've seen that it's not even a lot more lines, right? It's just a few lines, and changing the font and the position of the font, and like adding this sort of filter that makes the world of a difference, right? Like our previous code was like around 20 lines, and this is like 40 lines. And all we've done is we wrap it around a card widget to give it this rounded rectangular border. And now, inside this rounded rectangular border, you're going to see this important line called flip behavior, right? So if you don't have this flip behavior, what might happen sometimes is that even though your image is in the card, it won't obey the card rules, right? So right now you can't see it, but the card itself does have rounded edges, but it's just that the image is not conforming to those edges. And that's why we're going to use this clip behavior and clip.hardEdge, which will make it conform to that, right? And then you have elevation, which is just putting the card above the other items in the app, right? And now here in the children, I have fade an image instead of an image. So the normal image flag just has an image, like it just takes in an image, and it like you have the height, width, and fit, right? So that is fine. But and here again, this important thing is this fit, which makes sure that it's taking up all the space in the card. Otherwise, it will just look according to its aspect ratio. So again, you can see that this one line changes the look of the app entirely, right? Just this one line makes it look so much neater and so much more uniform. So when you're working with images, most of the time it's going to be the split and the clip behavior that is a very important attribute for you to set, right? And now I'm going to use the position one like previously and just center it. And the only difference here from what we did previously is me changing the font and declaring that its color is going to be white, and adding the font weight, right? And also declaring the size and the alignment. Okay, so now that we're done with that, here we have an app that looks very close to the app here, right? So now our last task will be the most important one, and that is adding this new place, right? So right before we go there, we just explain this line of code which is there in this on tab, and I'll also explain what exactly this inkwell widget is. So an inkwell widget is can be used to be wrapped around anything that is not usually a widget that is expecting to be tapped, right? So like here we're using a card widget, and sometimes there might be cards that we don't tap, right? They're just there to like show you some information. So if I tap on this, nothing's going to happen, right? So when you wrap it around this inkwell widget, that's when if I tap on this, you're going to see some sort of animation, and it's going to expect a tap, right? And then I can declare the functionality for this tap from this on tap function, right? So here the keyword async means that it's waiting for something to happen, right? So when I click on this, basically, if I just uncomment this code and I tell you where I got this code from, you can see that it's going to parse the URL, and then you see the await keyword, right? So this await keyword basically is referring to launching this URL, right? So we're going to wait for the app to launch the URL, and if this did not happen, we're going to throw an exception. But because we're waiting for it, like this is something that you will see later on as well when you're getting data from the internet using APIs, right? There will be some sort of time delay in getting the data, and before you get the data, you might have to wait, right? You can't just render like content directly when the data is still not loaded, because the data will be null, and then your app will break, right? So that's when this async and await keywords are used, and whatever is the operation that will take time, they will have a return type of future, right? So future means that it's going to take some time, and it's going to come in the future, right? And that's why we use this async keyword. So now you can see that this launch URL is basically showing an error right now, but I'll show you where I got this code from. So if I go back here and URL launching, you can see that I have this line, and here they're using a URL that is fed by them. But in our case, our URL is going to come from the location class. but you can see the function here which says launch URL, and you can just copy this function, go back, and you can see that this is exactly what we have shown here, right? So, uh, so what we can do is either we can just copy this and do that, or this launch URL itself, this function comes from the URL launcher package. So just load it and directly in the on-tab function, put the URL. URL would be this map.url, and then just try to launch it, and then throw an exception if it doesn't work, right? But but the problem that you might notice, I think on Android it should work fine, but for iOS, yeah. So on Android it does work fine, but for iOS, or like even sometimes in Android, like I was mentioning, there is this configuration tab, right? So you will need to go and add this key and array, right? Which is mentioning what kind of permissions you need. So right now we're only launching a web URL, so we don't really need these permissions. But if it was an SMS or like a mobile number, right? You will have to add these permissions into the respective files. So here you can see that it's in info.plist. You can just go to your iOS folder and go to runner, and you can find the info.plist here, right? Similarly, if you are editing the Android one, just go to Android, and here you can see Android manifest.xml is the file's name. So just go to Android app and src in main, and here you're going to see Android manifest.xml, right? So that's our Android manifest.xml, like that's configuring this URL. So now we have all the functionality of the app, right? But there's only one thing left, that is adding an extra item, and this is going to cover a lot of important concepts. So I'm going to be covering this in the next video. So this was just like making it look the same way, and also adding dependencies in Flutter, right? So now that we've done this, in the next video, I'm just going to be covering state and adding a new location, and then that will wrap up this workshop. Right? See you in the next.